To act like tanking isn't a reality of any league that has a draft in general is ridiculous.
Obviously, he has to get younger, and he is really in need of a quarterback, I would say.
I just want to say that Trevor Lawrence is a proud listener of the Death by Dynasty podcast.
All right, so this guy was late to record here because he's betting on college basketball in mid-January when we're trying to be on Death by Dynasty, making moves, and we're in the thick of the offseason, Tyler. What's going on, man? Where's your focus?
I'm honestly ready to get into it. We took the weekend in a weekend long retreat to kind of clear our mind for the fantasy season, to kind of get our auras right, to make the moves that we need to make. We actually recorded a Death by Dynasty podcast from the back of a speeding van. So it's a lost tape at this point, but at some point maybe we'll be able to recover it as a bonus feature when for like 100 episode celebration.
Yeah, right now the cabin's got it at this point, but we'll see where
it's in the archives.
Yeah, we'll see when it might come out at some point. But yeah, we were out in the wilderness, we needed to clear our minds away from football. It's good to clear your minds away from football for a short bit and not be like biting at the bit to try to make these trades. Just relax on it a little bit.
You say that, but we watched every single game still. We found a way where there's a completely off the grid, no service to watch a piece of every single game.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. And it was yeah, so we really didn't take much time away from football, but regardless.
But everything else, fantasy football actually doesn't take breaks. Everything else can take a break, but fantasy football, you got to be dedicated even through vacation.
And we're going to look at a couple teams here. Couple teams in our league, and we're going to kind of evaluate them and make some potential trades, kind of some mock trades. We're going to go through the process a little bit, but doesn't officially count. Obviously, it's two other teams, but it'll be fun. So the Jersey Shore, well, I'll start with Peter Stages, who Sam is the owner of that team, and he was on a couple weeks ago after celebrating his championship. So he's coming off of a championship, obviously at the pinnacle. But I mean, as we kind of said in that episode, a little bit of an older team. And meanwhile, we're gonna see what trades we can make between him and the Jersey Shore cast, where Gallo has a very young team. I forget how many first round picks he had last year, but if I could count right now,
I think it was 6.
Team 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, I mean, yeah, whatever. We'll just say 6. He had a lot. He had a lot
to make an appearance. He's
there we go.
I think he had 6 first round picks, and every single one besides Sky Moore hit, and I think he traded him away. And I'm gonna be honest, I know Nick's listening. He's one of our biggest fans of the podcast, so I know he's listening right now. His team's loaded. Taking a deep dive onto his team, I was hard pressed to find weaknesses. So shout out to Nick's team. You guys can see it here, but it's an impressive squad.
His team is loaded, and it's just a matter of like what young players are gonna like really come into their own next season and like take him to the next level. But like on paper, to me, he's a playoff team and set up for the future perfectly. Really.
And exactly, that's what I'm gonna say. His team is so young. He hit on almost all of his draft picks on a year where he kind of sold out, like just sold everything for, and he doesn't have anything this year, but next year he has 2 first round picks, and one of them is from a team in our league that, no disrespect to them, I don't think is going to be in a position to compete, so it'll probably be a top pick. So his team's solid, but at the same time, I think he can actually begin the process of beginning to compete sooner. So I think that's where we look for in the trade here, where Sam's team is looking to kind of look towards the future, still stay as a competitor,
retool, I guess, not necessarily rebuild, but
not rebuild, but add pieces that can avoid a big drop off in the future. And Nick's looking to, I would say, I think he's set up to compete no matter what, but I think he can begin competing even sooner if he can.
Like go from competing to potentially winning a championship. Basically.
He has players on his bench who I would be starting on a weekly basis.
On my team, definitely would be.
But the crazy thing is too, all respect to, is he won't trade any of them. I've inquired about every single one of those receivers. We talk about this year's class of being loaded in receivers, and every single one of Nick's receivers that he had, like we said, Sky Moore, but he traded him. Every other one, Garrett Wilson? We got Chris Olave. Where's his? Here, I got it right here. Jerry Judy, Drake London. He hit on everyone. So he has players who like AJ Dillon and Antonio Gibson on his bench who are studs. So add that with some players for next year. His team's just absolutely loaded. So I think he can give some of those players up and just build.
Before we really get into it here, I'm gonna just like pick out a player. Like, what do you think of Rondale Moore, and how would you like evaluate him? Because I do know he's for me, Rondale Moore is a young guy who was he's still very young, but I expected a little bit more out of him when I saw him on the field this season. And obviously injuries are tough, but I do believe Gallo is shopping him around a little bit. So
yeah, I think that's definitely a player in his position that he should be shopping. I think he's that player who, if I have, I feel like every year I look at him, and I look at him and I feel like I almost want to pull the trigger. I always hear really positive things about him, but then he does get injured quite often from what I can remember, and he just doesn't have that like consistent breakout potential where I feel like he's that player where he reminds me kind of how DJ Moore was throughout this year, where every time I would start him, he would probably have like 2 or 3. And then when I have him on my bench, he would score 30. So one of those players who kind of up and down. And I feel like you want those players who, I would rather a player who scores 8 to 9 points every week than a player who scores 30 some weeks and 5 the other
yeah,
weeks.
yeah, for sure. Something about the Moors, I don't know, but so I mean, I know. Okay, so I already know that we both made a trade for the same player essentially. So when you look at Peter Stages' team, obviously he has to get younger, and he is really in need of a quarterback, I would say, with just a lot of uncertainty at his quarterback position right now. And so when you look at Gallo's team, I already know he loves Justin Fields, made a big trade for him. Trevor Lawrence, he traded away and then traded back for him. So he loves Trevor
Quickly, within
Lawrence.
like a few weeks, I want to say.
Yeah, literally
It was like
within
he
less
traded, it
than
was
a
like,
month.
shit, I shouldn't have done that. And like traded right back for him right away, which I actually at the same time don't hate on, because if you were to trade him right now, his value is way more than it was when he traded back for him
He could trade him
after.
again and get even more. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I think that's a Trevor Lawrence at this point, though. If he's performing at a high level right now, I think he's a player you hold on to
Yeah, Trevor Lawrence, I
in
mean,
a
he's
super
really
flex league,
starting to come into his
100%.
own. Yeah, he's really like he's living up. He's finally living up to the hype. Really towards the end of the season, because I didn't even see much out of him earlier in the season last year. But
He
so
got Dougie
basically,
P.
I look at that and I say, okay, so what are his other quarterback options for Stages to go and get? I mean, Trey Lance is too much of a question mark, way too much of a question mark for me. Zach Wilson is like almost done for at this point.
Yeah, I
And
don't want any
so,
piece of him.
you look right at Kenny Pickett, who is a promising young quarterback,
Yep.
and is certainly the starter next season for Pittsburgh. So that's where I started off. I guess, do you want to say what you came up with? Because I know you had a trade for him as well.
Yeah, I thought the same thing. I wrote the need for Peter Stages is a QB, and I know Nick is one of the teams that set up well for Superflex, so I thought Pickett was a great move, and Sam has some veteran players who, Peter Stages has some veteran players, I should say, who I think Nick can take advantage of to have a good few years here to set him up for a championship. So I came up with Kamara for Pickett and this year's 12th pick in the 3rd round. That was a trade that I think could go down right now. I think it's a riskier move for Nick, but I think to compete to win a championship, I think it's also a championship move where I think this is an off year for him, to be honest, and I think he's going to bounce back. But at the same time, you never know what can happen in the NFL, especially with running backs. And I think Pickett is an option that's going to be a good QB option in fantasy for a good while to come here. And I think Peter Stages is in a desperate situation for a quarterback. So I think this is a move that benefits both teams.
When I look at Kenny Pickett, I'm still like unsure of what he's going to be, but I do have confidence in him just because of the team he's on and the coach that he has, kind of. Because like
100%.
There were definitely games this year
say the same thing
where he looked bad. Like his play looked bad, but he still looked confident out there and was able to a lot of times come from behind and go on game-winning drives even after having a bad game. So that to me is actually a pretty big deal, and hopefully he takes that next step forward next season. But so Kamara for me, like, I don't know. I mean, I guess if you're trying to win now, but like
he's 27. He's not that old. Like in running back terms, yeah, but he's also a running back who, I mean, albeit he gets injured, but is a player's skill-wise who can avoid injury, where he's not someone who's getting hit all the time, where I think he is a player who can have his career last maybe a year or two longer than a running back who's running straight up and down, because he's able to catch passes. He's able to kind of save himself a little bit in times too, but at the same time, yeah, you just never know. There's like Todd Gurley is the best example, where he went from being one of the best running backs in fantasy history to being irrelevant within 2 years.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, definitely like Kamara has always been a great running back and fantasy running back. Yeah, I'm just kind of question mark for him. I would, if I'm a winning team, I would want Kamara, but I'd also be skeptical to do it this offseason. I might want to wait until somewhere middle next season to do it, but that doesn't mean it's a bad trade, and it definitely could still work out in getting that extra boost from Kamara. I feel like I had a similar idea. So another thing when I look at Gallo's team is like he's really stacked all over the place. I want to say that his wide receivers are more stacked than his running backs, but like he's got a lot of wide receiver depth, and a lot, like when he had all 6 drafts, that he spent almost all of them on receivers. So that's where like his receiver depth is a little bit more. But I mean, he still has Breece Hall and DeAndre Swift. But yeah, I mean, I don't know if I'm undervaluing Kenny Pickett here, but the trade that I came up with was Cole Kmet and Kenny Pickett for James Conner, 2023 3.12 and the 2025 second. I would have wanted to do like a 2023 second, or potentially 2 seconds, but Stages just doesn't have it. So, or yeah.
Yeah, no, I don't think that's that far off either. James Conner, honestly, he's a player who I haven't watched much, and just off looking at him, I initially was like, oh, that's a position that Peter Stages is going to want to upgrade. But then the more I look at it, I looked at his stats. I'm like, he actually, in the games that he played, he performed pretty well. So I don't think it's that far off either. I do think I've said it every episode so far that Superflex is, I don't know. It's confusing because I don't know how to rank quarterbacks right now. I think I'm ranking them very high, but I think you never know. We're gonna find out this year.
I could see that. Not that Peter Stages really needs a tight end, but Cole Kmet could be a good flex position if needed. But I could see him coming back in that and being like, Gallo being like, I'm not throwing in Cole Kmet and just doing Kenny Pickett for James Conner the third and the second.
He'll probably throw in Noah Fant or something just to start playing mind games.
Yeah.
But we've been hyping Nick's team up for a while, so I'm gonna kind of tear it down a little bit and point out a weakness for him.
Okay.
I do think the running backs are actually a weakness. It's Breece Hall and DeAndre Swift.
Yeah.
I have zero faith in DeAndre Swift moving forward. Absolutely zero faith. And Breece Hall injuries can kill a running back. I wouldn't have I have way more, like infinite more faith in Breece Hall than I do in DeAndre Swift. I think DeAndre Swift very well could be out of Detroit in the not too distant future. And he's just one of those players who has so much talent and had so much potential. But I really think it's just an unfortunate situation with injuries, and just not even really bad injuries, just injuries that are just going to keep on nagging, and being in situations where he can't have that contract year or a breakout year. And I know he's still so young, so it's crazy saying that. But like, even look at like this year, like Jamal Williams having the most touchdowns in the league, where DeAndre Swift still played a good amount of the season. So he's a player who I don't have any faith in. And then looking towards, like you mentioned, all of Nick's picks were used towards receivers, and they were great picks. It was a receiver loaded draft. So the next trade that I came up with was to solve that, because as we mentioned, Nick has an abundance of receivers, especially ones on his bench that could start on a lot of teams in the league. So I said Garrett Wilson and DeAndre Swift. And I know it's crazy because I'm saying I don't like DeAndre Swift, but to each their own. Someone may love DeAndre Swift, and for all we know, he's going to break out, because that's probably what's going to happen because I'm saying this. But
he's at least, I mean, he could be a buy low. He could be a target you might want to
value wise, you're going to hear that he can be really good, and he very well could be. Has very high ceiling, very low floor.
But definitely didn't live up to the hype this year at all.
Right. So I said Garrett Wilson and DeAndre Swift for a 2025 second and Christian McCaffrey. And I know that Christian McCaffrey is a crazy one to throw in there, but those are two young dudes who are game changers if they can play to their potential.
All right. Tell me again, Garrett Wilson. Who else?
DeAndre Swift.
For
a 2025 second from Sam.
Okay.
Peter Stages. And CMC. Christian McCaffrey.
Okay. Garrett Wilson and DeAndre Swift for a second and Christian McCaffrey. Is that what it is?
Yeah.
Okay. That's interesting. Okay, so here's my trade. This is funny because
I want to point out one point about that. So when I was putting these together, it's hard because I have no like emotional investment in these trades. So it's kind of like me just piecing things together just willy-nilly and seeing what sticks, and then being like, oh, that kind of makes sense, and then kind of building from there. So I was putting them in trade calculators and just seeing the value wise. And in that trade, the DeAndre Swift and Garrett Wilson was heavily favored as the better end of the deal between the CMC and the 2025 second. And in my head, if I have CMC in the 2025 second, I'm probably not doing it. But that's more along the lines of me not thinking DeAndre Swift's going to be that good moving forward. But I just thought that was very interesting that sometimes value-wise, you can be very off. And I know we've talked about trades in the past, not on the podcast, where we're both kind of think the opposite side was the better end of the deal. So
yeah,
it's kind of an interesting one to look at.
Yeah, like for me, if I have Christian McCaffrey, it's gonna be. I mean, Garrett Wilson is a great young wide receiver. That's like where I'm at. And like, to be honest, the more I'm thinking about it, I am probably like your trade better than what my trade was because of how valuable Christian McCaffrey was. But I was thinking along the same terms as you, because I did Christian McCaffrey and DJ Moore for DeAndre Swift and Drake London. Drake London not as valuable as Garrett Wilson right now. So
yeah, I'm no way I'm taking that deal if I'm Peter Stages.
Yeah, and DJ Moore, obviously.
I think DJ Moore, he started slow this year, but that was a ridiculous situation in Carolina. So I think has high ceiling. I think his playoffs is more along the lines, or when I say playoffs, I mean fantasy playoffs, is more along the lines of how he's going to perform moving forward.
So if you're Peter Stages, do you not trade DJ Moore at all?
Not right now. I think his value is not where it should be, and I think he's more along the lines of a one of the best wide receiver twos or a low wide receiver one. No, that's saying a lot. I think he's in the wide receiver two range,
very solid,
going down to a low wide receiver two to a high wide receiver two as a ceiling.
Yeah,
that's how I would say it.
Yeah, I agree with that. I agree with that. Now, Drake London could be very similar potentially moving forward. But obviously DeAndre Swift does not equal Christian McCaffrey. So
Drake London was so weird.
I mean, that
I had him
offense
in.
was awful.
I had him in my redraft league, so I feel like I have a pretty good idea of his performance. Whereas at the start of the year, it was unsustainable, where he would have 2 catches for 20 yards and 2 touchdowns, and his fantasy stats were really inflated. But towards the end of the year, he started being a little bit more consistent. But at the same time, that's not going to be his quarterback situation moving forward. So you never know. And the offensive situation is a wild one as well, too. So you never know what that's going to look like moving forward, too. So I think he's one, too, where I wouldn't, I don't know, because you can kind of, I think he's one of those where he's a wild card, so you can get a lot of value for him, but I think you could also be giving up someone who's a great receiver.
Yeah, it's tough to trade guys like that. And in fact, like I've learned the hard way. I mean, again, if you're ready to win and this guy's a question mark, you need to go get somebody who is a surefire bet. But like I've run into situations where I'm like trading away a young guy because he's just such a question mark, and it seems like it's leaning more towards him just not being an elite fantasy player. And then I trade him and, they're still developing. They're so young at that point. They're still developing. And then he starts developing into someone more towards the elite standards. So yeah.
Patience
is big for young players. It's big for young players. It's big for Dynasty. If you're gonna spend 6-round picks on a guy, or spend 6-round picks on getting these young players on your team, like, you got to be patient with them all, basically. So, all right, we have a similar thought process. I threw that trade down. Again, not too much emotional investment in it, but looking at it again now, I do believe that I would need to throw in some more to get Christian McCaffrey for sure. But I also wonder, again, Christian McCaffrey, like, this is my personal thought process. Christian McCaffrey is 100% a very valuable running back. But like, I am always going to go into it a little skeptical if I want to get it for the least amount of value, or if I want to get the most value out of a trade. I wonder if Christian McCaffrey, like, he finally had a season where he was fully healthy. But like, do we expect that to be the trend moving forward because he's had so many injuries in his career?
I think he's found a team that's going to be able to maximize his potential. I think the Niners is the perfect fit for him. And I do think that that's going to be a way better position for him career-wise than Carolina.
Yeah.
So I think if he were to still be in Carolina and like it got signed a contract extension, I would be way less high on him than I am now that he's in San Fran.
Yeah, no, that is a very solid counterpoint, because his value has probably gone up being in San Francisco. So fair point there. But like, hopefully you guys are seeing our thought processes here as you're looking at their teams, and like, we at least both agree on what their needs are, and kind of like, everyone's going to have different philosophies on an individual player, but like, understanding and pinpointing needs and knowing who to target is big. And who knows, maybe that was a catalyst for Peter Stages and the Jersey Shorecast. Maybe they're going to make some of these trades happen now. We'll see.
There's 100% chance Nick will acquire about a trade after this. 100% chance the Jersey Shore acquires.
I just want the people out there to know that there's, as much as
Inquires,
I love trading, everyone loves trading. There is nobody in our league that loves trading more than the Jersey Shore cast owned by Gallo.
All right, so we're going to transition, but before we transition, I just want to say that Trevor Lawrence is a proud listener of the Death by Dynasty podcast, because he mentioned after the game that he wanted to go to Waffle House. I don't know if he was talking about him for the first time or someone else, whoever he was talking to, but he was listening, and that is 1000% will put that idea in his head.
That's so true. Actually, I forgot about that, because I actually thought that same thing when I saw that. We're on here talking about Waffle House and the Waffle House challenge, and this guy's gets his first ever playoff win. And where does he go? First thing he does, he goes to Waffle House. Trevor Lawrence, I wish the best for you. I know you're listening out there.
Thank you for
So,
listening.
all
All
right.
right. So we added the taxi squad to our teams this year. And if you don't know what a taxi squad is, it's essentially a practice squad for fantasy, with some rules that apply. I believe the rules are that it can only be a rookie, and it kind of
That was
it.
our rules. I don't know if that's always the case, but that was implemented in our league that they had to be a rookie.
So you add them to your team, and it's essentially like they're not part of your active roster. You can't start them on a weekly basis, but it's a way for you to be able to add players who maybe they're not going to perform this year, because I feel like Dan, you especially at the end of this year, you were looking for players who you saw potential in years down the line, and I think the taxi squad serves that purpose perfectly.
Yeah,
While still,
absolutely.
and with having that rookie requirement, doesn't limit the free agent market as much, because the free agent market's already limited. So if you can add anyone on there, it would be even more bare. But that rule, I think, does make it a little more fair. So
Yeah, just really quickly, like, I love the Taxi Squad. Once I started hearing more and more about it, I was all for it. And I totally understand why it was made that it had to be rookies. In my mind, I had guys on my team that were already potentially Taxi Squad guys, but they aren't rookies, so that doesn't fall into that suit. But basically, you want to get a guy on your Taxi Squad that you think is not gonna be playing. Like, you don't want them to play this year. You're literally only saving them for the future. So yeah, I like that.
maybe we could talk about adding like a fantasy point career minimum. Like, for example, if they've scored less than 20 fantasy points in their career, they can be added to the
Yeah,
taxi squad.
yeah, for
Something
sure.
along those lines. But all that to bring up kind of a fun topic here. It got me looking at different rule changes and different twists that people have done to their fantasy league, and some are interesting, some I think are pretty stupid. But I do think some are really cool twists. But I know not a lot of people would agree. So I have them all listed here. So I feel like we could just kind of go through these here and just say what we think about them, and if we think that could be something that you would implement if you were the commissioner, or to other leagues and whatnot. So the first one that I feel very strongly about, and I actually have a different belief for Dynasty, but for redraft leagues especially, is I don't think kickers should exist in fantasy football at all. And I get in heated debates with my redraft league. Dynasty, I think it's flawed. Every single kicker, the difference between kicker 1 and kicker 12 is so minuscule. So you're just picking who you're throwing darts at a dartboard, and the amount of times that kicker position determines the outcome of a game is ridiculous. So I think that and something that I saw online that other things do is give more points. You kind of increase the complexity of the kicker position, where you give points for touchbacks, more precise scoring, where a 31-yard field goal is 3.1, a 3.2, a game-winning field goal could be plus 10. Extra bonuses for a kick under 30 seconds left in a half. Things like that to kind of make you strategize what kicker you're going to get, besides just getting lucky with the perfect weather conditions and like which team decides to kick the ball more that given day.
I'm a little bit indifferent about this, but I would not be mad if there was no kickers in our league. I'm kind of like I'm like I said, I'm indifferent about this, but like, you don't ever trade kickers. Like, literally, you don't even, like, even if you have some big trade and you have to throw in a guy just to like push it, move it forward, like, it's never a kicker. It's
It would
some like
never make a
random
difference
backup
to
running
me.
back. It never makes a difference. And you never add it. You're never a kicker is never putting you over the edge to win a championship or anything like that. Now, sometimes a kicker will randomly have like an insane game, and he could be the reason why you win that individual game. But
A lot of games, though, think the amount of games that you lose by like 2 or 3 points, and your kicker lost by 2 or 3 points, or won by 2 or 3, whatever it is. And like you're saying, you would never include that in a trade, shows that it has no value, but has so much value in a given game. It just doesn't add up between the two. So I feel like that's why I feel so strongly about it.
yeah, 100%. And and one more point, like, I did mention at some point this season, I was thinking about how it used to be like there's one or two elite kickers, like Justin Tucker. Now I swear, like, half the league is automatic. Then there's the bottom half that's like okay or maybe
Or they get
borderline
cut every other
bad.
week.
Like yeah, exactly. Like Dallas kicker, he's gone. They're gonna have to find a new one for next week. But
But
like
then you
yeah,
get Cameron Dicker, who comes in practice squad and is now one of the like best kickers in the league.
yeah, for sure.
Not
If
best
you
kicker in the league,
if
but
there's
had
a
a lot of clutch
kicker
kicks this year.
on a fantasy league, you're a 12-person league, like you probably have a quote unquote elite kicker. Like yeah.
All right, I'm gonna start getting to a little more juicy ones here. Uh, this one's really interesting. 2 matchups per week. So you're against 2 teams per week, and you could get 2 wins, 2 losses, a 1 win, 1 loss, 2 ties. So it takes away that variability where, it's always the worst when you score 125 and your opponent scored 130, and then the next closest score is like 93. So it takes a little bit away of that variability, but then it also adds, it just isn't the same. I feel like that's more of the argument against it. Such an extreme change.
It is an extreme change. Like my first immediate thought was like, nah, that's stupid. But I do understand it for that exact reason. And as someone who's rebuilding, I always, if I think I had a good week and just lost and it's fine, I'm rebuilding, whatever. I do look and say, okay, but how many other teams would I beat or been close to beating this week? So I still think that the best teams are still going to be the best teams and the worst teams are still going to be the worst teams, but it does make things interesting.
It gives a little more, it gives a less of a chance to like the underdog team who gets lucky and just gets in. Like, for example, my team at 2 weeks left in the season, I had a chance to make playoffs. I would have needed crazy things to happen. My team, I think, is like a bottom 4 team. I lost both of them, so I dropped, but I very well, if those 2 games went the other way, and if I never traded Justin Fields, and I still, even with Justin Fields, would have been, I don't think, in a position to even come close to competing, I would have probably made the playoffs. And it's just, I feel like gives it, if we did 2 teams per week, I would not have even been close, because the games that I'm winning, I'm like the 3rd lowest scorer, but I just happen to play the lowest score that week. So it's like the flip side of it.
Yeah, it might even things out and be more true.
So let's keep on the loser side of things, I guess. So winner of the consolation bracket gets the number 1 pick. Everything else stays the same.
Oof. No. I don't like that at all.
I love it. I love
I
it.
work hard. I never have a number 1
It
pick.
takes away tanking completely.
But okay, it does take away tanking. But I'm gonna tell you, like, I work hard to tank sometimes.
that I get it, and I respect it as a strategy, and I think it should always be allowed as a strategy if you want to. But a lot of leagues don't want tanking. So if you want to get rid of tanking, that's a rule that will instantly get rid of it. It makes it more fun for everyone. Like, you go into the playoffs, everyone's hype. I'm trying to win that to get the number 1 spot.
I don't mind the consolation tournament being worth something to, like, some way to force people to actually try in those consolation tournaments a little bit and give them something to like look forward to. But the first overall pick is just so valuable. I think that's too valuable. I think it could be something else. It could be something like the 113, like add, like, just, you're picking basically after the first round, you get the next, basically
The
the first,
113, you
or just call it the 2.1, whatever you want to call it. But yeah.
No, I like 113 and keeping like the rest of it. They would make the most sense because we keep the rest the same.
Yeah, exactly. Something like that. Like, and that's still pretty dang valuable.
Yeah, 100%. I don't even think that's a tradable pick in our league right now. And we have a team who came in after one of the
I think it is
left.
Tradable. But yeah, we have
I was looking at his team. I don't think it has it as an option. No.
Okay. Well, I thought that they said it was tradable, but either way, yeah, we have a new owner that came in this season, and the team, it was hard to sell the team a little bit. There's a reason why the owner left, although I think it was a little bit better than expected at first.
At first.
But yeah, that this new owner owns the 113. So yeah.
All right. Here's another one that two different positions that we had. So we added the super flex this year. These are 2 more extreme positional ads. I've heard of people adding like individual defensive players, which is okay. I feel like
fun,
it's whatever.
but
It's
yeah.
But so I heard rookie only position. adds way more value to the draft each year. People aren't trading away their pick every year.
Yeah.
And a coach position, which I feel like is the most intriguing, because rookie position, obviously, do what you want with it. It's you just know you have to get the best rookie. But a head coach, here's some points that I saw that how they would score: points for wins, negatives for losses, points for successful fourth down conversions, successful challenges, things along those lines. And again, it's kind of like that kicker where it's just like a small variable, but it takes strategy to know a coach that's going to be able to have successful challenges, go for it on fourth downs. So I think it is one of those that if you ever feel stale with your league, you can kind of throw in there along with the rookie one.
Yeah, these ones for me, like they're not gonna probably make a difference in your league, but it will make it fun. And I actually was in a redraft league this year that did have head coaches.
Really?
Yeah, it was all for fun, and it was really like the league was really just much for fun, so
That's
it
cool,
didn't
though.
really matter. But I experimented with it. I think you only got a point for wins. I think that's what you got a point for. So, but it was fun. The rookie only position, I like you said, it'll make people not, like you're gonna have to draft a rookie. You have to or trade for one at some point before. But the reason why I like that, I don't know if I truly like it, but this is something about our league where a lot of the league is so focused on winning that they think that my team, like I'm truly focused on winning every single game and I'm truly coming into the season looking to win the championship. And that's just not, I'm being real with myself. That's just not where my team is. And then the rest of the league doesn't even understand that. Like, it just doesn't understand that that's my thought process and that's like a couple other people's thought process when you're at the bottom of the league. And so I just feel like it'll even out some of those rules and the way that people go about things.
Well, my thing too is that to act like tanking isn't a reality of any league that has a draft in general is ridiculous. I was watching a YouTube video earlier. It was John Wall, and he was talking about his time in Houston. And he's talking about, he was throwing strays out there. He was like, you think I'm going to win games with Justin Patton starting? Like, they're just throwing me out there with Justin Patton. I don't know why that one stood out in my head the most, but it was like, he was just naming random players. He's like, they're putting us in position to lose. Like, I hated it. Like, and then they wanted me to come off the bench the next year, even though I'm averaging the most. Like, it's just something teams do. Like, you have to get better somehow. And it doesn't always happen through trades. And, it's either you're going to trade away your players and stack other teams, or you just put yourself in position and start and visibly tank. So I feel like it's something that just has to be allowed. And at the end of the day, if you have an issue with another team tanking and putting another team in a better position, win more games.
Yeah. Like, if anything, if you're trying to win, I don't get why you should be mad at another team tanking. Like,
No, everyone plays them. You play every
Yeah.
team once. You may play them twice, and if it's a team that plays them twice and that one game is the difference, win more games.
And the end goal is literally this way. The league has turnover, and it's not the same 5 teams at the bottom and the same 5 teams at the top. If that's how you want your league to go, it's just not going to be a successful longevity of a league. Like, it just won't. You need to have some flexibility. You need to have turnover. For sure.
Every successful dynasty league needs to be thinking 10 years down the road, because that's what you fight for. Because if our league ended in 2 years, literally me and you,
suck.
we would be like we would be wasting our money every single year just throwing it out because we are just trying to build for that time. So you really do need to think about that at all times when building kind of your league and your culture around your league.
Yeah, 100%. I agree. Interesting, different rules to look out for, kind of make things fun, switch things up. Keep your thoughts open. If you guys have something where you do it in your league, let's hear it. But regardless, you'll hear more from us next week on Death by Dynasty. Until then, we out. Peace.